Welcome to the How to Quit Working show. This is the only show that brings you awesome people just like you who got sick and tired of doing something they don't like and don't care about and have created an amazing life of freedom using what they know instead of just getting paid for what they do. And now, here's your host, the Quit Working guy, Jeff Steinman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today, we have Jeff Gitterman. Jeff runs a capital management company, and he is also an author, and he's structured his life such that he doesn't have to do anything that he doesn't like to do. He's obsessed with finding other people to do the things that he doesn't want to do so that he can live a happy life, enjoy time with his family, and focus on his favorite causes, such as helping autism through the foundation that he works with. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I'm excited to talk to you about it because one of the things that I love about having a lifestyle business is that when you have a lifestyle business, the thing that you get to do is you get to focus on things that you really care about. And in your case, that is autism. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have a 16-year-old son with autism, and I just, I'm not one of those why me people. I'm more a why not me person. Yeah. So, when my son was diagnosed with autism, it just seemed that we should do something positive around it. So I got involved in the medical center where my son is treated, and we've raised over $1 million for them in the last 6 years to support community services and outreach in the poorer areas. And it's definitely a miracle. So I don't want to say that having a son with autism is not an incredible challenge, because Sure. It certainly is, but it's also, a miracle. It just makes you look at life differently. When I talk to parents around the country about, can you point to one positive impact of your child having autism, they always say that they are a better person. The little things that used to bother them don't bother them as much. They focus on the much bigger picture. Love is a much more important aspect than how much money you make or the struggle you might be having during the day. So I think that this world kind of needed a wake-up call, and I think autism is one of those wake-up calls.
Well, that's great. I applaud you for pursuing something that you really care about and that is really meaningful to you. That's awesome. Now you said that your son is 16, and I think you've been at this with your life kind of the way it is for about 15 years, right? Is there a connection there?
Yeah, I would definitely say, and I talk about this in the book, having a son with autism or a child with a disability, I think causes you to, reflect more on your life and what's important to you. And sometimes the things that you're chasing out in the world that you think are going to bring you happiness, you find don't bring you much happiness. I know plenty of people with lots of money working in jobs that make them miserable, and that's 70% of what they do with their life is their job, and it just doesn't matter how much money they're making. So I think it definitely helped me stop and reflect on what was important to me. Yeah.
So what happened there then? What did you start to do when you said, all right, I'm really relooking at things and what's important to me, and I gotta do something different here. So what did you first start to change?
Well, the first thing I changed is how much I was looking outside of myself versus how much I was looking inside myself. I think that, most of us, especially in this culture, we're brought up in a very competitive, what do you have, what do I have culture. I think most of us are always looking outside to measure our happiness. And if we don't feel happy inside, we're always chasing something outside of us to find that happiness, a better job, a better title, a better partner, more money, more sex, more drugs, whatever it turns into. So I took kind of a big stop on the brakes, and I started looking inside to try to figure out what is it that actually makes me happy. And what I found is that helping other people is what makes me the most happy. So I started turning my life around, and where I was doing things that I didn't like or chasing things that weren't important to me, I started cutting them out of my life. It took time, it wasn't an overnight process. It took probably 6 or 7 years to really get things structured the way that I wanted them to.
Okay. What's something that you were chasing that you thought was important before you had this realization?
Money. I was definitely chasing money back then. And the interesting thing is the minute I stopped chasing it, the easier it became to make it. But I was definitely chasing that. I don't think there's anybody in our culture that doesn't measure themselves in some way through money. It's very difficult not to. So, my barometer was the more money I had or made, the more self-worth I thought I would have. And that's just not true. There's really no connection at all between money and self-worth. But yet, so many people, and I coach many people on this today, so many people have their self-worth wrapped up in money because that's what our culture measures your worth in. So it's very difficult to break that pattern. But that was what I was chasing. And the interesting thing is, you come at this two ways. Some people chase money and can never get enough, and then ultimately, hopefully, start evaluating that relationship. I was chasing money and actually had gotten a lot of it by that point.
Yeah.
And realized that no matter how much I was getting, it wasn't bringing any satisfaction or deep inner peace or better quality to my life.
It's so interesting because I talk to so many people and I hear that so often. It's like, okay, I've got all this money, now what?
That's why the book is called Beyond Success, because it was really written, not that it isn't for everyone, but it was written with the idea in mind that there are a lot of people that have made what our culture would consider success and still don't feel happy or at peace. So that's why the title was exactly what it says.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. So what are some of the things that you started to change at that point specifically? Like, what are some of the things that you said, all right, this has got to go, this has got to be out of my life?
Well, the first thing I did is I really started back to having a spiritual practice. And I say that because to me, it doesn't matter what that practice is, whether it's meditation or jogging or working out or there's got to be some practice that connects you. In the book, I call it source. And I've spoken to atheists at Microsoft and a think tank and gotten them to agree that source is a good word for whatever comes before us, because we're obviously all coming from somewhere. So, whatever you want to define source as, Christ or Buddha or Krishna
or the Big Bang, right?
Energy, whatever you want to define it as is fine. Can we start the conversation right after what you define it as?
Okay.
So I just thought it was important, and I think it's important for everyone to have some kind of relationship with yourself or source.
Okay.
So I went back to having a meditation practice. And I just think when your attention is always outside of yourself, what we talk about in the book about what meditation is just learning to turn that attention back on yourself. So it's not for any end goal. It's kind of like working out. If you want a body that's if you want a body that's working well, you go to the gym regularly. If you want a mind that's clear and working well during the day, you meditate, or you have some kind of practice where you do some kind of self-reflection. So really that was a critical starting point for me, because it allowed me to get control of a mind that was constantly chasing things outside of myself, chasing the BlackBerry, the ticker on the stock symbol, more money, whatever it was chasing. And it got it to focus back on who's Jeff and what makes Jeff happy and what brings me more peace.
Okay.
So really that was the beginning. And then from that, I really started thinking about this kind of a 4-step process. The next step was, all right, now that I've regrounded myself a little bit, now let's figure out what is unique about me. What do I do that I love that I can do out in the world? And, I said earlier, I really realized that what jazzed me and made me the most happy is when I was helping people. And what I looked back on my life where I got the most accolades And this is important because, you don't want to reflect on something that you think you're really good at, but people tell you all the time that you're not good at it. Our world has a nasty way of telling kids that they can be anything. And we've grown an entire culture of narcissistic people with no self-reliance at all. The first time they hear they're not good at something, they break down.
Yeah.
So it's important that when you're looking for that, we talk a lot about that in the book, what jazzes you, what kind of puts you in flow, time, you don't even notice time when you're doing it. People tell you that you're good at it. It's helpful if you can earn a living at it because you want to do what's passionate, and this world is based on, getting your basic needs through money. So I looked at all that, and what I came up with is, my speaking about this. And, it's interesting because you're doing the same thing in a way. You're speaking and writing about what you found that brought you passion. So I found that that's kind of exactly where my sweet spot was.
Okay.
And then from there, the third step is redirecting your attention into the future. So what I mean by that is most of us spend all our time thinking about why now sucks. And that is not fruitful or helpful at all. I believe that your imagination is almost like a projection machine, like a movie projector.
Okay.
And that the thoughts that are going on in your head all day are the script that you're writing for the future movie.
Yeah.
So if you're constantly thinking negative thoughts and why this doesn't work and why your past sucked and why your future is not going to be great, if you're thinking that all the time, that's the script that you're writing all the time. So we got people to actually make a movie in their head, not a real movie, of what life would look like 3 years from now if you were living your passion all day in kind of perfect harmony in a really big way, not in a small way, in a big way. So like instead of you having a radio show, maybe you have a TV show on a major network. That was the gist of it. And it wasn't about how much money you were making. It couldn't be about having a new car. There were no faces in the movie. It just had to be about you projecting out the biggest you possible 3 years from now, and just a perfect day. So kind of from morning to night. And you can play that in your head in 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops. And we had people literally every night before they went to bed would play their movie. And within about 30 days, we started seeing really dramatic changes in people. And the one thing that we noticed, which is critical, is that the difference between them in the movie and them in real life was that them in the movie was them showing up without fear. Which is what really holds all of us back. And, and it's that fear of being vulnerable or being shamed, that fear of showing up big in the world, really putting yourself out there on display is so visceral. That's why the fear of public speaking is the number one fear, because that is just putting yourself out there.
Yeah. To be judged.
So, yeah, which is, and that brings up, I think shame and vulnerability are the two hardest things to overcome in trying to be successful. That we just have such fear around that, and it's such an untalked about subject. I mean, it's interesting. The number one viewed TEDx program, 5 million views, is a view by Brene Brown, a woman, speaking about vulnerability.
That's an amazing interview. I love that.
Yeah, it's incredible, right? So, and that's what we're talking about in the movie. It's can you come up with an image of yourself that is out there, putting yourself out there? Because unless you get comfortable with that idea in your own head first, it's very difficult to just jump right out there.
Yeah.
So that process of doing that movie over and over again, and we have people change it, adapt it, rewrite it, but never ever stop doing that. Always be projecting 3 years out in front of you where you want to show up to. Albert Einstein said, your image is wrapped up in your imagination, and it's crazy that word is in imagination, but that's what you've got to do. You've got to use your imagination to unlock a bigger, bolder, fuller image of yourself.
I love it. And it seems like where people get stuck sometimes is that they've got this whole life going on. They've got all these day-to-day things. And what I heard you say a minute ago is you had a very young autistic son, you were in the middle of a very successful career, and you maybe had some other kids at the time. I don't know how old your kids are, but it sounds like you had a lot of crap going on in your life. I don't mean crap in a bad way, but you just had a lot going on. And then you started trying to make changes, and that, to a lot of people, that just feels like you're driving a semi down the road at 65 miles an hour and trying to change the tires. How did you do that with all you had going on?
So, we coach people on this as well. The trick is to change you in your current role first. What people don't realize is that the world is just one big system. And how we're playing in that system. People like to think that they're isolated and they're alone, and it's about one pie and what I can get from the pie. But, we know now, you just have to watch any show about the universe and science. We know that we're just a rapidly expanding universe that started as one dot.
Yeah.
So the idea that we're limited is just foolish. It's just wrong belief and thinking. But the problem is that, if you think that you're just that one dot, fighting for whatever you can get, then you show up that way in the world, and the world kind of responds to that. So what we get people to do is not to focus on how do I drop this job and start this new job and what's the finances of it. How do I start showing up as that person I see in the movie 3 years from now, today at work, in my current job, no matter what that job is. And it's amazing when people start showing up differently, what happens to your life. Because you're I know this is hard for people to grasp, but your life is something that you've built. If you look back over the last 30, 40 years of your life and you look at all the choices that you've made, that's what's built your current life. So the choices that you make today, if they start being different than the choices you made over the last 30 years, then it might not happen overnight, but your future life is going to look different than your current life, because it's going to be based on the choices you make today. So we get people to start showing up at work in their current job without worrying about making big changes. We don't actually let people think at all in the first 30 days or plan at all how to make any changes. The critical piece here is seeing yourself differently first. If you can't get that down, nothing's going to change for you. So it's just that is the most critical piece, and that does start transforming and changing everything after that.
Okay, so you're saying don't even try to make any practical changes in the first 30 days. Just change how you show up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the fourth step is expanding your awareness. So what we say, and this acronym is CORE, C-O-R-E, connecting to source, owning your own expression, redirecting your attention into the future, and expanding your awareness. And it kind of came out of the whole idea that today in working out, your core is known to be the most important aspect of any workout that you do.
Sure.
But if you don't have a strong core, nothing else works. So this is kind of the same thing. This is building the core of your life.
Okay.
And expanding your awareness means just taking some of that quiet that you're cultivating, that non-wandering mind that's seeking attention outward, taking some of that and giving that to the people around you in a very, very simple way. So what we say is don't ever start with people you know or family or people that you work with, because you have embedded patterns and expectations built up with those people that it's really difficult to break. People just expect you after a while to show up as the same person that you were yesterday. So to try to show up differently to that person today, you're going to be met with rejection, wonder, confusion. So we tell people to just start dealing with people that you don't know. The grocery clerk, the dry cleaning person that hands you your dry cleaning. And it's so simple, just by asking them like an open-ended question. How's life? Why'd you start this business? Just starting to tap into this idea that you can give someone your attention. And the world today, the internet is coined as the attention economy. And if you know anything about how corporations are spending billions of dollars trying to figure out where people focus on the computer and what they pay attention to, that's why it's driven as the attention economy, because corporations have figured out if they know what you pay attention to, they can sell you anything. So the idea is to take some of that attention that's kind of being stripped away by big business and capitalism, and give someone some of your attention with no expectation, and just silently listen to them. We start a lot of our presentations with saying that the word silent and the word listen are made up of the same letters, and that's because you can't have one without the other. You can't listen if you're waiting to talk. So we have people do this, and we get the most amazing feedback from it. People are so starved for attention today. It's no wonder that we have a huge epidemic of ADD and ADHD, but there's just very little time where you get another human being's attention anymore. There's always some back noise or something going on to distract us.
Sure.
So we walk people through those 4 steps, and it doesn't take any money, and it doesn't take any effort, and it can start tomorrow. And people that do it, and I'm just going to say this as a disclaimer, very few people make it through the 30 days.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because there's a huge struggle here, because as much as people hate their current lives, they're comfortable and familiar.
Yeah.
And to show up in life as something bigger carries all that vulnerability and shame and fear that we were talking about. So while a lot of people complain about their lives, very few people actually want their lives to change.
That's the most frustrating part of my business.
Oh, God. Listen, I'm a coach.
Yeah.
And the biggest lesson I've had to learn, and I tell this to every single coach that I know, is that you can create the life circumstances for somebody to change, but you can't change anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's for sure. So tell us a little bit, Jeff, about what does your life look like today? I know I don't ask what does your typical day look like, because nobody has a typical day, especially in this world. But just tell me what are things like for you on a day-to-day basis regularly?
So I run a wealth management firm, and that obviously takes time. We have a couple of offices, 25 employees. We manage over $1 billion, advise on over $1 billion in assets. So that keeps me pretty busy. But the best part of that part of my job is I still have a big client base. And I would say that my clients, and there's been a bunch of articles and interviews with my clients, that my clients pay me for my attention at this point. When I see my clients who have been with me for 20 years, at this point they're not concerned at all with what I'm doing with their money. They really just want to sit. And I've cultivated for the last 15 years the ability to give someone else my attention, and people will value that more than anybody in today's world knows. I think we'll look back 15 years from now and be like, oh my God, we really missed the boat on that for a long time, because it's the reason why people go to their favorite hairdresser. It's not for the haircut. It's for the way that you get to talk and spill your guts to your hairdresser. I mean, there have been studies that people tell their hairdressers their most deepest secrets. Mm-hmm. And if you want to think about, deepest secrets, the one thing they won't tell their hairdresser or talk to their hairdresser is about money. And so take that a step further and think about a financial advisor. Mm-hmm. That's the one place where you've got to talk about money, and that's people's biggest sex and money, I guess, are people's biggest shame areas. But it's very, once you've broken that barrier of money, you've created a deep bond with somebody, and it goes well beyond what the current financial plan is. So the best part and my most favorite part of that is that I have great clients who I get to spend very deep quality time with. And that's the focus of my business. When I go to meet somebody in business, and I speak at conferences pretty regularly now about how to bring compassion into the workplace. And bringing compassion into the workplace is literally about having that person's best interest in your heart and mind when you go to meet with them, without any agenda of your own. And I don't go to any meetings anymore with my own agenda. So it just creates a beautiful bond and a great experience. That, and then speaking, whether it's doing interviews like this or doing conferences or presentations or seminars in front of groups or one-on-one coaching, that's just by far my favorite aspect of my life, being able to connect, with my kids as well, just being able to connect. It's not what you're doing, it's kind of how you're doing it. And it's just a lost art. I mean, we do lots of things today. We're busy all the time. But how often do we just really stop and connect with another human being?
Very cool. Very cool. So, the question that I feel compelled to ask you is, how do you balance it all? How do you do all that? You're running a wealth management firm. You have 4 kids. You're speaking. You're traveling all over the place. How do you keep the wheels on the bus?
So what I've noticed, and what people say who are very close to me and my executives at my company, is that more gets done around me without it seeming like I do anything. When you quiet your mind, you can fluidly move from one task to the next without carrying the prior task with you. And most people, because they haven't had any kind of practice of really quieting their mind and gaining control of their attention, most people find that very difficult to do, so it's exhausting. To literally do 17 different things in a row in a 2-hour time frame, be able to clearly, concisely make a quick decision about each one and move on and let that decision go, takes cultivation and effort. It's not a natural skill that is developed in kids in any way. So that's how I balance it. It's really that simple. I can walk into my house from having a crazy day at work, and I can quickly drop work. It's not effortless. It takes some effort, but I can quickly drop work and put it out of my head and then turn my attention onto the next thing, whether it be my kids or whether it be, traveling or whatever it might be. So staying present in the moment is critical to having a full life and keeping it all in balance. It's critical.
Sure. What would you say the biggest mistake that you've made along the way of building this life for yourself has been?
One is saying yes too often. Because I tend to do a lot, I have my personality is I always want to help. I think that's the natural personality of a coach. And it's very difficult for me to discern who really wants to learn something from me and move on, and who wants to latch on and just be cared for. So I get into lots of traps over the years where either an employee or a friend or whatever it might be, or someone that I'm coaching, where it becomes a codependent relationship rather than a teaching, that really develops someone. I happen to be Jewish, not that I practice it, but my favorite line from Christ is, if you teach a man to fish, you help him for life. If you give him fish, you help him for one meal.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for me to draw that boundary when someone is really just looking for the fish and doesn't want to learn how to fish.
Okay.
That's my toughest challenge in life.
Okay. So you kind of found some people that didn't want to learn from you, that they just kind of wanted you to keep providing them with either motivation or facts or whatever.
Or money or, support.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Cool. So what would you do how would you handle that differently for folks that are listening?
Well, it's really just been the last year, and I'm 40. I'll be 48 in a month. It's really just been the last year or so that I've started to address that.
Okay.
But the biggest thing about it is really, if you don't take care of yourself can put yourself first, you don't have the energy or the capability to take care of anyone else. So I would run myself down trying to just never say no to anyone, and it's just not healthy. And you really have to take a step back and say, all right, wait a minute, what is this relationship providing for me? I mean, if I'm getting a lot out of it from a coaching perspective or whatever, this isn't, a selfish viewpoint. It's literally, am I getting fulfilled from this relationship? Is it feeding me in some way? It doesn't have to be monetarily, but is it feeding me in some way? Do I leave this relationship feeling energized? Or every time am I with this person, am I feeling drained? Am I dreading, seeing this person? Am I avoiding them? And I looked at those relationships, whether it be at work or in my life, and I started about a year ago eliminating those relationships. And it was very difficult because it comes up against kind of all your, depending on who you are as a person, it comes up against a lot of your self-worth issues. So, most of us want everyone to like us.
Yeah.
So, I had to risk the fact that I was going to fire people or kind of end relationships with them and risk them not liking me. But it freed up so much more energy. I realized when I stopped pouring a lot of energy into people that, where it wasn't being then given back out into the world. So can you know what I mean? If I'm giving you all my energy, and then you're just sucking it all in and not helping anyone else or changing your life at all, then it's just pouring it into a black hole almost. When I freed up a lot of that energy by ending some of those relationships, what I was able to do in a positive way in the world started increasing rapidly. It's almost mind-boggling. Just people calling for more speaking engagements, more engagement with more companies. I'm now on the board of a couple of different businesses. Just the opportunities started flourishing. I really think that the more energy that you put out into the world that can be reused, the more energy you have to bring into the world. And I talk about this a lot. The fact that money is called currency, I believe that money is the current in our culture on which energy travels. So the more energy you're putting out there that can be reused by more and more people in a positive way, the more money also seems to flow into my life to be able to do more and more of that.
I see. I'm glad you brought up the idea of removing people and ending relationships where they're not serving you or they're not serving your mission. Can you talk? What advice do you have for people who have some of those relationships in their life and they need to get rid of them? I mean, do you just kind of sit down with the person and tell them that it's not working?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I had to do. And, sometimes it's met with a lot of negativity. I really would lay out that I don't really see how this relationship is serving either one of us. If you could really point to, this kind of puts the other person on the defensive. But if when you're speaking to the other person, if you could point to ways in which you can see that this relationship is really serving both of us, not just you. You can really point to and address how this relationship is serving both of us, then maybe we can work towards a better, more harmonious relationship. And, most people will respond by saying how they need the relationship. And you're like, well, wait, okay, I hear that, but how is the relationship serving me? Well, what do you mean? What are you providing, in some way for me? It's unbelievable how when someone is asked that question who tends to live their life by taking energy from other people, is kind of confounded by that because it's just not their dynamic. And the way this universe works, my favorite line of any movie is when Morgan Freeman is talking to Steve Carell's wife in the restaurant during the second Bruce Almighty movie.
Okay.
and she's flipping out because he's like turned into Noah and he's building the ark, and she thinks he's going insane. And Morgan Freeman, who's God in the movie, but he's a waiter in the scene, says, if someone asks God for courage, he doesn't just give them courage, he gives them an opportunity to be courageous. And for those of us that are really in this world trying to learn and grow, it's never going to just be handed to us. There's going to be opportunities for us to step up to challenges so that we really learn and we really grow. That's the only way you really learn and grow. You don't grow from being handed something. It's why most lottery winners within 5 years are right back to the same net worth that they were before they won the lottery. Because they haven't learned how to use that in any way or how to be different with it. So, I obviously, I wanted to learn that lesson about the fact that my self-worth starts with me, and it isn't measured or reflected by other people. I have to own my own self-worth. And when you own your own self-worth, just like in Brene Brown's presentation, then you can show up and be courageous because you're not fearful of being measured and judged by other people. This is what I do. This isn't who I am. I do presentations. I do books. I do radio show. But I don't need you to love it. Not that I don't want it to be great, but I don't need you to love it for it to say or measure anything about who I am. I'm already good before that. So when you learn to hold that, and by ending relationships, you learn to hold that because you're challenged by the other person. You can't do this to me. You can't let me go. You have to support me. I mean, the things you'll hear. I'll die without you. These are the responses, and to be able to stand up in the face of that and not be hooked into that is a hard. I mean, for me, it was the hardest lessons that I've learned.
Awesome. Well, great advice, and I think advice that a lot of our listeners need to hear. It's a tough part of really taking control of your life, taking the bull by the horns. It means getting rid of people that are not contributing to that and are not giving you what you need. And I thank you for that advice. I'd like for you to just tell us a little bit about the autism work that you do.
My son was being treated at an autism center that was being funded by grants.
Okay.
And when I found that out, I just got kind of fearful because I loved my son's doctor. Just had a great respect for how he treated each kid individually. And really, you could see his attention was with each kid as each kid came into his room. And I respect that so much in the work that I do. So we just started really doing fundraising, and that fundraising was so successful that I got asked to serve on the advisory board to the center and help with community outreach programs. And today, I just help in many ways try to improve services in the autistic community. Working, with a great company right now that's trying to provide kind of smartphone technology for how to navigate through having an autistic child from the minute you get the diagnosis, because you could spend years trying to navigate the maze of services and medical and diet and everything. It's just incredibly difficult, especially, when my wife and I first got into this 14 years ago when we found out. She spent countless days and hours researching everything. Alternative cures. I mean, you name it, you can spend your life researching it. So we're just trying to make it, a better world. I don't know if a cure is possible in my lifetime, so I put my energy into, how to care, how to help the parents, and how to provide services for it. I think that, in some ways, if you talk to these kids, the ones that are high functioning, it's an interesting thing. They actually think they're a leap in evolution. That wouldn't be. It's very difficult for parents of kids who are on the low functioning end of the spectrum because these kids have to wear helmets and they're in wheelchairs and they're throwing their feces at their mother. But then when you sit down with some of the kids on the Asperger's side who are really high functioning, a lot of them are completely disgusted by the idea that there should be a cure because they think they're smarter than we are. And a lot of them are geniuses. I mean, at levels that we can't even comprehend. Kid I know sees every single memory in perfect holographic imagery in chronological order at the blip of a second, could pull it up and draw blueprint graphs out of his memory.
Wow.
So you see some of this and you wonder, what is nature doing? I mean, it's a rough thing because we're going through, the idea that right now it's 1 out of 110 kids, but, you kind of look at it and how we're going to care for these kids as they become adults in a government system that is already not caring for senior citizens well enough is. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my big concern around the whole thing at the moment.
Yeah. Well, awesome that you're stepping up and taking action. I think that's great, and awesome that you've created a situation for yourself that lets you do that, and I applaud you for that. Well, what's the last piece of advice that you would leave our listeners with?
This is your shot. This is your shot to have the best, fullest life possible. There hasn't been a better time in the world for people to step up because there's incredible challenges out there that can be met. And it just, at the end of your life, you're not going to regret what you tried. You're going to regret everything that you didn't try. So really, get out there, seek advice from people like you, Jeff, and from great books and from TEDx. I mean, you could sit, I think, for days and watch TEDx videos and be amazed at what's going on in the world from a positive perspective, like what people are really doing, and incredible change. And we're going to see more change in the next 20 years than we could possibly comprehend. Mm-hmm. So, just get out there and be a part of it. Jump into the fray. Don't be scared.
Awesome advice. Jeff, where can we go to get more information about your book?
BeyondSuccessConsulting.com is the website. The book's available on Amazon. And we're also on Facebook as BeyondSuccessConsulting.com.
All right, so we can go to BeyondSuccessConsulting.com and look for more information on your book called Beyond Success. And Jeff, I thank you so much for being here. I've enjoyed talking to you thoroughly. I love the perspective and just all the information that you brought to the table today. It was great. Our listeners are going to love it. Thank you very much, and look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you, Jeff. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the How to Quit Working show. Tune in next time when we'll talk to another amazing person just like you who is now living the ultimate life of freedom and doing it on their terms. If you want to learn how to quit working and get these episodes delivered directly to you, visit howtoquitworkingshow.com.